2021 has started off on a note of happiness, harmony, and healing. With gentle rains, cool air, warm clothes, and the company of our loved ones, love certainly is in the air. And if love is in the air, can poetry be far behind? Certainly not. It is precisely for this reason I bring to you Sakshi Narula, the charming Indian poet from Oman who specializes in poetry of the heart. Her words tug at the heartstrings, and she rightly dedicates her poems to the lover in you. On the Writer Talks today, I am in an engrossing conversation with Sakshi as she speaks passionately about love, loving, the inevitable heartbreak, loss, grief, and living in a state that she refers to as lovish. Quoting Rumi, the way of love is never a subtle argument. The door there is devastation. She advocates acceptance, processing emotions, and nudges all of us to take our time to heal, for there is value in the art of staying lost. At the same time, she optimistically urges us to continue to love again and again and again. After two hugely successful collection of poems, Loveish and Lover, in January, she is all set to release her newest collection, Lost. I am certain that you look forward to reading this as much as I do and be immersed in the myriad mysteries of this mystical heart. So let's dive in and listen to the charming Sakshi. But just before that, like, share, and subscribe to the Writer Talks. My dear subscribers, once again, I am urging you to bring in more subscribers so that we can continue this literary engagement with brilliant writers from across the world. Do write in your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. And until next week, take care, love, and ahoy! Ahoy! Welcome to the Writer Talks, Sakshi. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Such a pleasure to meet a fellow Indian, a fellow poet. So warm in such a warm feeling in such a cold weather. Actually, very reassuring.
Well, I am just glad that I'm getting to meet people because of my writing. It's just wonderful the doors that this has opened for me. I've kind of made a lot of friends on Twitter and on Instagram because of my writing, because of my books, and it's just wonderful to interact in person.
Absolutely, absolutely. What's the secret behind what you have a humongous set of followers, isn't it? Some 30,000, close to 30,000, isn't it?
I don't know what the secret is. A gentleman once had said to me that people follow you because of how you look. It's not because of your writing. And I said, I completely agree. I completely agree. It's because of that. I just felt that I should have had at least a few more, a few 100,000 more, if that was the case. But here we are. I started out on Instagram. I don't have that many followers on Instagram. The algorithm is a little different. And a lot of poets who are really successful are successful on Instagram. Twitter is a lot of hard work in terms of engaging. I spent a whole year, engaging with a lot of people on Twitter, which kind of led to the huge following. Twitter is like the more you interact, the more people start following you. It's very simple like that. But Instagram is a little different. Instagram is purely algorithm based, and what happens is they want people to comment on each other's work, and they want you to save the post, and there's like a whole lot of jazz, which kind of is very time consuming for me. If I have to handle Twitter and Instagram together, it's a lot of work for me.
Right. I'm not on Instagram, so I wouldn't know actually. I'm quite ignorant there. I think the writing community on Twitter, especially, it's very good, very encouraging, and very supportive. You get to see such talented people.
I think you have all kinds of writers on Twitter.
Correct.
I've just seen poets on Instagram, largely.
Mhm.
on Instagram. But I've seen like on Twitter, you have the agents, you have there are so many events that are done for people to kind of pitch their work to agents and things like that. So I think largely the writing community is on Twitter at the moment.
Right, right. Congratulations on the immensely successful books, Lovish and Lover, The Art of Staying Lost. Immensely successful
Thank
and
you.
so brilliant, so evocative set of poems that you have there.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I released Lavish in 2018.
Right.
Uh, and Lover is something I've been working on for the past 2 years. I even tried pitching it to a lot of agents, but it just poetry is very difficult to kind of market for agents as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. I recently tried that, and I can imagine how hard it must have been, and that's the reason why I decided to just publish it on Kindle. And you don't even have high expectations that there would be too many readers because very few people actually read poetry. To be very honest,
I think people are scared of reading poetry. I think what happens is because it's there are a lot of metaphors, or maybe the language is a little more complex. People just kind of fear that they would not understand it. I
right?
think that it's not just fear; it's like that reluctance to
Right.
understand something.
Correct.
It's just yeah. I think poetry is for everyone. It
Absolutely.
was a very important part of culture. It still is.
It's still
Um, but I think what has happened is over the years people have like kind of like, oh, it's going to be difficult for me to understand, so why pick it up and read it? So it's more like that.
I would agree with you. I think it's largely in the mind. Otherwise, I see that your poems are so evocative, so sublime, and I think you captured the entire gamut of emotions associated with love.
Yeah, I mean, when I share something with people that I have written, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we understand this," and they're quite surprised that it's something that they can understand. More than I mean, resonating with something is completely different, but then just able to understand the structure of something and that it's leading somewhere. You know, because when you write a poem, just like a story, there is a beginning, the a middle, and the end. Everybody does that.
Right.
But when you're writing a poem, you have to make sure that it's well rounded, like it comes back. You know, you've told a story, but what is it that you want to convey with that story? And that is something that you have to do within a span of, say, I mean, you could write a poem for 3 pages, which is 3 pages long, but at the end of the day, there has to be something that it culminates into. It's like the climax of the poem. So, so yeah, that's something that's people kind of when they read it, it's like, oh yes, we got it, we understood it. So with me, because the theme is pretty simple, it's love, it's something that everybody, it's heartbreak, everybody's had one. So it's like it's easier to understand it. I mean, if I write a poem about war, which would be like highly unlikely in my case, but I mean, yes, a lot of people will not be able to relate to it. If there is a poem about partition, only the people who've really, really gone through it, like if I read it to my father, yes, he would kind of,
Resonate.
tell me if it kind of captures the emotion of it. But to a common man, or a teenager who's reading a poem, they're not going to be able to relate to that. But love is such a theme that it's relatable to everyone, you know?
Relatable, and it's so all-consuming yet mystical. Such a
Yeah.
powerful emotion.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many ways. Everybody says, "Oh, how much can you write about love?" But the fact is that you can write in so many different ways. There's just you can compare it to anything. You can compare it to a table. You can compare it to a tree. You can compare it to Jupiter. So That's how it is.
Absolutely. If you're asked to define love in a sentence, what would your sentence be?
Mm. Thing like a give and take. I don't see it like that. You know, if a mother, starts saying give and take, a
Right.
child will never be able to compete with that. Like a child will never be able to say, oh, I can give my mom the same kind of love that she can give me. Um, so yeah, so I'm just going to read that quote out for music. And she says, so much of the music nowadays is so like, you don't know me, I don't need you, you know, that's how she's explaining how
Right.
the kind of music or the kind of lyrics that are written today. And then she says all the music then was kind of like, I don't care if you don't love me, I will lie down on the road, pull my heart out and show it to you. That, so it says, I don't care if you don't love me, I will lie down on the road, pull my heart out and show it to you.
Beautiful. Right.
So to
So
me it's just,
I am trying to say then you do not keep a reader or a particular target audience in mind. You just write.
see, the target audience, I really don't understand when love poetry can be, slaughtered as something that is for teens or that is something for, I see teens these days. You should see the teen poets on Instagram.
Mhm.
They're writing such heavy stuff. I mean, it's just amazing. I think love poetry is for everyone, whatever the age may be, whatever your gender is, where you come from, where you live. I mean, I've read poets from other countries and I still can relate to that emotion. So for me, love poetry is for everyone. It's for every, it's for teenagers, it's for young adults, it's for, older women like me.
No, absolutely. I would completely agree with you. And the poems on love, one can never have enough of them. There is so much said, and yet there is so much to be spoken about still.
Yes, and it changes, your perception of love changes as you grow older.
Right.
And it kind of, there is a growth in that perception as well. And it reflects in your words. And whether you like it or not, it will reflect in your
It
words.
does. It does.
Um, so yeah.
Right, you're right. Now, very specifically, I actually wanted to bring this to your notice. There is such a sensitive portrayal of loss, grief, the aftermath of betrayal. It's almost like you really understand that, and there is a friend who is giving you an understanding, warm hug, a pat on the back, and saying that it's okay. You can continue to grieve over that. How did you manage to evoke such a voice in your poems?
Um, when I started writing Lavish, it was for my own healing, you know. Um, when I say healing, I don't mean just heartbreak.
Mhm.
I mean healing from a lot of things that build on a heartbreak. There are so many things that affect you. Um, Friendships affect you. People that you live with, your family, they affect you. And heartbreak can come from anywhere. You know. Um, so what happens is with when I was writing Lovish, it was more like I want to heal from all these experiences that I've had. You know, I want to kind of put it all out on paper. Okay, the poems were not written. Okay, I didn't sit down and say I'm writing this book and I'm writing these poems. It wasn't like that. It was over a period of a few years that I had been writing, and then you collate everything and then you put it in a book. You know,
Right.
so yes, so all those experiences build up, and then there comes a point where you hit rock bottom. That's the point where you say, either I can heal from this or
Mhm.
I can just be miserable the way I am right now. So for me, Lavish was more about me healing from whatever I had gone through in my life. And, whatever I had felt, I just wanted to kind of um, write it in a manner or put it together in a manner that was um, relatable and readable for a person who doesn't even know me. Like you don't know me, and if you read a book and you read it, it flows like a story. Lover is a different kind of a book, but Loveish flows like a story. It's like love. The first chapter. There are three chapters in the book. The first chapter is love. The second is lust. Third one is Loveish.
Right.
So it's basically falling in love. The physical aspect of love, and then um, when I said Loveish, it's more about heartbreak and loss.
Right.
So
Right.
that's how the story flows. So what happened with that book is that um, it was years of writing, just culminating into a book. You know, Lover is different in that sense, where um, I've used my learnings, lessons, my growth as a person, how my perceptions have changed, and how I understand what people go through on a deeper level because I've been through it. I know it. If you tell me, have you felt broken because of a friend? Yes, I have. If you tell me if I've felt broken because of a family member, I have. I know these things. Um, so the point is, at the end of the day, I was like, okay, what really is happening in the world right now is we're just pushing people to be positive. We're pushing people, oh, just get over it.
Get it.
Just move on. Like everything is so instant these days, like you meet, you have sex, you move on. It's not like that. Life is not like that. You or maybe it is for some people, but for me, it's like,
Right.
okay, you're not processing your emotions. You're just going from one thing to another. And then you're not processing any kind of trauma that you've had. You're not processing your own feelings. You're not honoring your own feelings. People suppress their feelings so much.
Absolutely.
Uh, I myself um, I found myself in a position where I was trying to look happy, you know, like I'm
Right.
unhappy, but I'm trying to look happy. Why? Because I need to make other people feel comfortable.
Correct.
Other people being my own family or, my own friend circle. But I don't need to do that,
True.
I've I've heard sentences like, okay, I think you should move on, you know.
True.
So what? Everybody would say things like that. But then the point is that if you're just moving on from one thing to another without processing it, it's going to show its ugly face at some point, you know.
You're
It's
so
going to
right.
come up. And so for me, writing was processing everything and processing it in a way that, you are able to heal yourself. And they always say that an experience that is shared um, with anyone. Like I can share my experiences with you, and maybe some part of it would be like, oh yeah, of course, I get it, I understand this, and I understand what she's trying to say and what she wants to convey here. So it's really your experiences may help other people heal as well, and
Right.
that's what poetry does. So for me, it's like Lover was a completely different, with written with a lot of wisdom. I
Mhm.
wouldn't call it like I'm not the wisest person in the room, but then whatever wisdom I have about a certain subject, I was able to kind of put it in that book and put it in a way that it's entertaining to read.
Thanks.
It's not like I didn't want to be like you know
True, yeah, yeah.
pages a
It
day
doesn't
of prose.
bring tears in that sense, yeah. But it's very very cathartic. It's very as you said, yes, one can relate to that. In fact, since we are talking about this, I particularly wanted to mention this poem, "A Love Like This." I think that really struck a chord with me because it captures these two phases so beautifully: the headiness and the flush of initial love, and then it also chronicles the inevitably tragic outcome. These couple of lines actually, as I was reading it, I mean, it was so much so that I actually put it down. It was so powerful. I'm in pieces now, but I still Love with a fierce madness. This is such
Yeah.
beautiful lines and beautiful use of contrast. You say that it is both adorable and devastating. How I have self-destructed. You want to speak about this?
Um, I think what happens is you know, when they say that you're stupid in love, okay, or we all make, you know, silly mistakes, or we are all silly when it comes to love. We're all, you know, like common sense just leaves our body, you know, and we indulge ourselves in behaviors that we normally wouldn't for love, you know.
You let your
Um,
guard down, basically.
you let your guard down, exactly. So it's more like, you know, you've kind of done those things, and you know, it's beautiful that you, and when once you're broken, you are just, it's it's like you become more intense a person once you've kind of endured that kind of heartbreak or something, or that kind of grief, or a loss. You know, you kind of become more intense as a person.
True.
So those lines are basically to portray that, you know, it's just beautiful how wonderfully you've self-destructed, you know.
Absolutely, and the beauty of it lies in its simplicity, but it's so evocative. It strikes a chord, actually.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite pieces. I, like I told you, like when I write something, it's like at that moment, that's the feeling that's the feeling at that moment. You know, it may not be true like 10 days from now, but at that moment, that's how I felt, you
So,
know.
how do you write? In the sense of, does that entire poem come to you in your mind and then you put it down, or it comes to you in parts, or as you
No, it's
work
just,
on the
I,
drafts?
you know, a lot of people tell me that, you know, they got a prompt and they wrote about it. Well, it's some starting point, you know, you just need a starting point for a poem.
Great.
So when you're writing a poem, it's more like, okay, the point, this, you get the starting point. The starting point can come from anywhere. The inspiration can come from anywhere. It can come from a book that you're reading, yeah, you know, just a song that you saw on the TV, or a movie that you watched, and you know, or maybe just, you know, anything in the nature. You know, you've just gone to the beach, and you know, you saw a couple walking by, and it just kind of inspired you. You get some starting point, and once that happens, you get that starting point, you start writing. So it's not never like, okay, I have a whole poem in front of me. I don't have like, okay, 3 pages of poetry in front of me. But when you start writing, it just flows like that. You know, you get one idea after another, and then you build it up. And then you think about how you're going to end it, because you always want, that's the most difficult part for me, because I want to leave you with a feeling, you know. At
Right.
the end of the poem, I want you to finish that reading that poem and say, wow, that was good, you know, like that came as a punch in the end, you know. So that's always very important to me when I'm writing. So that takes a lot of time, but then writing it all down, putting the skeleton on the page, yes, that's something that comes automatically. That's something I don't know how it comes.
That's lovely, and we're glad that it does come to you.
Yeah. I can actually read you a poem here
Sure.
from my book Loveish, which will kind of which I can use to explain this. So this is a while ago when my son was a lot younger than this, and we were sitting here
Hmm.
on and watching TV, and
Okay.
he puts on something on the television, and something on Discovery. You know, they were talking about planets and stuff like that, and I'm just playing on my phone. I'm not really paying attention. And my son's like pushing me to pay attention. He's like, Mama, see this. Mama, see this. Okay, I'm just looking at it. And I'm like, okay, I am going to look at it for a little while. So I ended up watching it for like half an hour. And then I started writing a poem after that. And I really think it's one of my favorite pieces ever I have written. So I thought I'll read it for you.
Sure. Absolutely.
And this is from my book, Loveish. So it starts off like this. And one day in my dreams, far out, I float on the Saturn rings. I see you build a home on the blue planet with someone new, someone who you went out with on fancy dates, held her hands on some crazy dates. Our story ended before it began. How I wished you were my man. It hurts that I'm here and you there, and there are no possibilities in a million years that you and I will meet. But I will keep on loving you, because love is all I am, and love is all I know. I love it here. It's quiet and nice. Stars surround me, and 53 moons look at me and smile. I talk to Titan about the color of your eyes and how they are the perfect shade of green. Prometheus knows how you smile and how it makes the sun rise. Told Atlas about how God perfectly crafted your body on one of those drunk and hazy nights. Calypso knows our story. He can't believe I chose space over you. We almost got into a fight. Pandora knows all our secrets, is always around when I get lonely. She's the only one who knows that your name is Corey. It's 21:33, and I conquered the space, went to the moon, then Mars. Now I'm now I am on Saturn, lost in a daze. It hurts that I'm here and you there, and there are no possibilities in a million years that you and I will meet. But like Bukowski said, it's possible to love someone you hardly knew. So I will keep on loving you. And someday you will know that a girl in space spoke to the moons about you. You, my love, are famous out here.
Amazing. So such
This is my
beautifully
this
woven
is my
allusions. Such
sorry.
beautifully woven allusions. You make it seem so natural, and there's such a lovely cadence to it. It's like a gentle wave coming and lashing the shore. It's almost like
Yeah, and for me it was like when I wrote this poem and I'm like, okay, this has to be one of my favorite things I've written more complicated stuff, but this is not complicated. But it's there is a lot of stuff going on inside that poem, you know. So a lot of emotions that are being processed there. So
right,
I was like, okay. And for me, it's like, how we sometimes we are talking to people, our friends about our life and how we sometimes are talking to ourselves, you know. So a lot of that stuff and a lot of stuff about loneliness is there in that poem.
correct.
So
Right, and the acute feeling of not being able to be with that one special person, right? That you crave for, hanker after so much.
yeah, I actually had written this poem initially from a man's point of view, you know, and later I turned it around because I'm like, it sounds more exciting when a woman is in space, you know, like she's left the love of her life and she's gone to space. So that was the emotion for me, and I'm like, no, this is more powerful like this, you know, like she's kind of chosen the space over a guy that she loved.
Right, right. Annoying cliche about love that you would want to dispel.
That the one that loves you will never hurt
Right. That's so true. I
you.
think
That's a myth.
contrary to the belief, it's the one who loves you is the one who can hurt you the most.
Exactly. You are the most vulnerable in front of the person that you love. So if someone says, you know, I've read so much poetry on Instagram where people, the one who loves you will never hurt you. I'm sorry, you are in La La Land. The one who loves you will hurt you the most, you know? So that's how it is, you know? And we because we are people, we are human beings, we are not perfect. We will make mistakes, we will hurt each other. And I think once people start accepting that, it's easier to kind of, and it's not just one sided. We always, it happens from both the parties. You cannot say that one person is the one hurting the other. When you're in a relationship, especially if you're in a marriage, you have children, one person will hurt the other, and vice versa. It's not going to be like, it's not a bed of roses.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. Fair enough. Speaking of lover, you have quoted Rumi. In fact, you've started with this, right? You've quoted Rumi and Amor Fati. Are they your favorite poets?
I love some of the bits. I really wanted to put some modern poets, the quotations by some modern poets, but I wanted to stick to Rumi because that's probably one of the first. He was probably one of the first things that I read in poetry, and it left such a huge impact on me. Um, uh, and I think anyone who wants to start reading poetry, I think if you start with Rumi, you'll be like, okay, this is the epitome of love. This is where um, every this is like the height of love.
Right.
This is you cannot beat that height. It's like way above everybody else.
Right.
So yeah, I wanted to include that in the book.
Fair enough. So
I
it's
actually use that in a lot of poems also. Like one of the poems that I've written for my the second part of this series, I've actually written, I read Rumi like a prayer.
lovely. So you're really paying obeisance to Rumi. So invariably, he's your favorite poet.
I have a lot of favorite poets. When I started reading poetry. So it's not something that I had been reading all my life. It wasn't like that. I'm being very honest about it. It's not something that I was drawn to automatically. But when I started writing it, I'm like, okay, I want to better it. So how do you better it? When you start reading more is when you start bettering it. Now, for me to go and join a course at this time and start learning all the techniques and stuff like that, it's going to be very difficult, considering with my situation and my kids and everything. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be able to do that. So what do? I go and start reading the work of other poets, And yes, I started reading. Rumi is something that I had read long back. So it's not something that, came back as at the time that I started writing. But then I started reading a lot of poets. I read Edgar Allan Poe. I read Pablo Neruda. I read Anne Sexton, and I read E. Cummings. And there's so many poets that you start reading the classics. That's where you start realizing, okay, yes, I can understand this. Sometimes when you're writing poetry, you find your words very simple in comparison to what other poets are doing, and then you're like, no, I can understand more complex stuff, I can add more complexities to my own writing. That's how you start developing yourself. And so yeah, I kind of have a lot of favorites now. I'm very surprised when I find someone um, who's like a punch in the gut kind of a poet. You read something and it's like, oh, that kind of like really hits my heart straight away. And I really love that feeling when I read someone new. And I recently read Kim Adonisio, and she's so brilliant. She is so brilliant, and I know she's been around forever, but I have discovered her recently. So I've been like reading a lot of her work. I like Ada Limon and all these people, Ocean Wong, and all these people. They're just brilliant in their craft. So yeah, that's aspirational. You start reading and you're like, okay, I want to write like that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's really nice. So when did you actually start writing poetry? Well, in any particular period in time that you started writing poetry? Has it been
Yeah,
fairly recent?
yeah. It was somewhere in the middle of this decade. It was 2016, I would say, is when I started really focusing on. I used to write blog articles before that. I used to sell articles online. But poetry is something like around 2016 is when I started writing poetry.
Right. And in just a matter of 4 years, I think you've really come a huge way. The trajectory has been so quick.
Yeah, it's because my mom is she's a teacher. She's been a teacher all her life.
Okay.
And when I started writing poetry and I told her I'm writing and I'm thinking of publishing a book and things like that, and she just gave me one piece of advice, which I have kind of followed through. And she said, if you're starting something, don't stop. You
Right.
know, because she knows how it's been with me with the career, me giving up on my career and choosing to stay home and with my kids, like I've tried to start my career again and again, in spite of the fact that I had given it up. And I'm like, okay, I want to start writing. And I started the blog and things like that. And my mom's like, whatever you're doing, I don't want you to stop, you know. I want you to develop yourself, learn more, and then, kind of build up. You don't just stop with one book.
Right.
You've written one book, just don't think you're done. You've kind of accomplished something here. The aim is not to kind of like sit here and count money. That's not the aim. The aim is that you keep growing. It's something that you can keep learning and keep growing. So I've kept that in my mind. There are so many times I get frustrated and I'm like especially this year has been kind of really tough, creatively, to kind of sit down and have that peace of mind to write something and things like that. But my mom's like, don't give up. So just because that keeps, it's like the moment I'm like ready to give up, and it's like, okay, no, mom said don't give up, like
Right.
just keep going, just keep doing your bit. At the end of the day, whatever happens, the result is not important. And she's like, you should keep doing what you're doing to keep yourself, updated and, read more and things like that. So that's one thing I religiously follow.
That's lovely. Another high point of your books is this lovely illustration, and then you're a poet who can sketch so beautifully. How did you come to think about including these illustrations?
Um, Not all the illustrations in the book are mine.
Right.
Some of them are. Like the one where the face of the girl,
Mhm.
gorgeous,
Mhm.
that poem that is mine. The cover art is mine.
Right.
Um, the backgrounds and all are vectors. Like the rest of the stuff, most of the rest of the stuff is vectors. There are more illustrations in the other book as well. So I've tried to include. I sketch on and off.
Right.
It's something I do on the side. It's not something that I have really focused on. Like if you give me a picture of yourself, I can draw your face, I can draw a portrait. Um, it may not be as finished as, like how artists do, but I still can draw that. So for me, it's like, okay, it's a work in progress kind of a thing. It's something I do on the side. And when I was thinking about illustrations for the book, and my husband's like, why don't you put the ones that you've done,
Right.
like you've drawn these things, why don't you put these things in the book? And I'm like, oh, all are not great, you know? And he's like, okay, a few of them are great, so just put that. So that's what I've done in the book.
Right. Fair enough. Who's your biggest fan and your biggest critic? Your most trusted, rather, your most trusted critic and your fan.
Uh, I think my biggest fan is my husband,
Okay.
and my most trusted critic is me, because I'm ruthless with my own words and with my own writing. So, and anything I do, my husband's like, okay, this is brilliant. He hears if I read a poem to him, it's like, oh, it's brilliant, and I'm like, okay, I just read you a shit poem. It's not brilliant, but he's like, no, for me, it's really good. So I would think a person who's a fan would be like completely blinded with the fact that, okay, this person cannot do anything wrong. So
So then, according to you, what are your strengths as a poet? What is your biggest strength?
honesty,
Right.
in my words. I think that's my biggest strength. Yeah, and I pride myself in that. I give my reader everything. I am not holding back any information. I am really out there, you
Right.
know.
Right.
I'm not mincing my words. Whether it's love, hate, anger, loneliness,
Right.
um, grief, I am just pouring it all out on the paper. And um, I don't believe in half measures, even in my own life. If, the people I love, they know I love them. I'm not somebody had put up a question on Twitter a few days ago, like, like, what if the person um, that you love thinks that you don't love, you know? It's very interesting. All these questions come up on Twitter, but the point is that I said I would never be that person, who would um, keep people guessing, you know.
Correct. You would show
So
that. You would make
yeah,
it evident.
and I think that's my strength in my writing. It's everything is there on paper, and it's whatever I'm feeling in that moment is there on the paper, and there is absolute honesty in that.
Right.
Yeah.
So after Lovish and Lover, what's next?
Okay. So the second part of The Art of Staying Lost comes out next month
Right.
in January.
Right.
Um, and I had actually planned it as one book, Lover and Lost. But I kind of wanted to have that space between the two books because it's a lot of emotions to process
Right.
together. It's like someone would be like, "Oh, I'm depressed after reading this book." I just didn't want that feeling to come about. I want people to think, okay, these are love poems, and not poems about being depressed or being in grief or anything of that sort.
Right.
So, um, so yeah, I wanted to space it out. So, which is why Lost comes out in January. Lover came out on the 30th of October.
Right.
Lost comes out on the 25th of January, and I'm almost like 60% into the next book that I'm writing.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully that will come out sometime later this year. I don't have a name. I'm still, tossing around with a few names, so I still don't know what to call it.
Is that
But
about love too?
sorry,
Is that also about love?
yeah, it's going to be a lot more different than this one, because yes, these were love poems and they were about healing, grief, and loss and things like that. This is just love poems. It's like just love poetry that anyone can actually gift a poem to someone.
Okay.
Like you can take a piece and you can actually gift it to someone. You know, so
Right.
it's like, yeah.
Great. All the best to both the forthcoming books. That I'm sure you do well with that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Do you dabble in any other genres as well? Non-fiction or novel? Do you have any ideas of trying your hand at that?
No, I have no experience.
Right.
One of writing a story or writing a novel. It's completely incomprehensible for me because I don't even know if I have the talent to do that. Um, this came to me very organically. Writing poetry is very organic for me. Words just come to me and I'm writing them. You know, um, a story, no idea. I can tell my story, but I don't think I'll be able to write it in a way that I can.
Probably in verse. You would tell your story in verse too. What would your suggestion to poets who are on the brink of publication be? What is the one thing that they have to bear in mind?
Um, See, poetry is very different to market than other genres of, like what happens with other genres is you come up with an ebook along with your paperback. And what happens is when you put it up, you can actually run it on marketing sites. The moment you put an offer up, for example, if you put a book up for, let's say, 99 cents or $1.99, you know,
Right.
the moment you do that, you can actually put it up on marketing sites and it will be lapped, you know.
Right.
So you pay the marketing sites, say $40 or $50 or $60. In some cases, BookBub, there are places like BookBub who will who charge around $400 or $500 for putting your book up when it's on offer,
Mhm.
and it will be lapped up. You'd probably end up making thousands from that $500. But
Right.
poetry is very different, you know. So it's not like a poetry book is on offer and it'll be lapped up, you know.
Correct.
Um, Twitter is a huge market. I'm not going to say Twitter is not a huge market, but so is Instagram.
Mhm.
Um, but at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that, you know, try to market it in the city or the place that you, not just online, but also in the place that you are in. Like go and talk to indie bookstores and go and talk to your local Indigo. I've heard Indigo, they stock books, you know. We don't have an Indigo here. So, and I don't think in Oman anyone would be reading English poetry, but
Right.
that's something that I cannot uh, do at my own level. But if you're in the US or in some other country, you can always go to a bookstore and say that please stock my books. So yeah, just don't look at online
Right.
marketing, but look at your local stores and your indie bookshops and all those places. They would stock your books. Go and give it to the libraries. Leave
Mhm.
your books here and there. I actually do this. I just leave a copy with a signed copy with some small nice message
Right.
here and there. And it's nice when people they contact you and they're like, oh, we found your book, you know. I remember when Loveish was released, my parents were traveling, and my mom was in Germany at that time, and I told her to kind of leave the book at the airport, and she left the book at the airport, and someone picked it up, and they were traveling to New Zealand,
Okay.
and they took the book along, and it was some girl, she had picked it up, and she messaged me on Instagram saying that I got your book at the airport and I'm actually traveling with it and I'm going to be reading it. And a few days later, she came back to me and she said, I'm actually going through a breakup right now. And it's more like the book actually found me and it's comforting me. Is it okay if I keep the book to myself?
That's
And
lovely.
that's what she said to me. So it's nice, you just leave things here and there. I would leave poetry sometimes here and there. But no,
That's a lovely tip. Any special message for viewers of the Writer Talks?
uh, I'm sorry if I bored you.
No, not at all.
And thank you so much for listening to me. If I just hope I've shared a little insight into what I do and how I do it.
I am
And,
sure. I'm sure. It has been
and
such a pleasure talking to you and then raveling this really, really mystical human emotion, love. You can never have enough of that emotion, isn't it?
yeah, I just think um, everything requires patience in life.
True.
And I think as a generation now, we are running out of patience for the people we love, and I think it's time that we started investing ourselves more. I think this year has been really good in that sense, like people have spent a lot of time with each other.
Yeah, I think
Though
it
a lot of people,
made you hit the pause button, which was so needed.
yeah, yeah, it's like we're just in a blind race, like we all want to be rich and we want to be successful and, we want to buy things, the next big thing, the next better phone. And, it's just like a race, everyone's just running. And I think somewhere this period has made everybody stop and think,
Right.
um, and people have spent a lot of time with their families and their spouses, and um, it's done a lot of good to a lot of people. I know a lot of people have suffered as well, especially the ones with mental illnesses, but I think overall this year has been good for relationships.
So, happy holidays and happy New Year to you. And good luck with
Thank
both
you.
your forthcoming books.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for
And
being on the
it's
Writer
been
Talk.
such a pleasure. Thank you.
Ahoy.